If it takes me longer than 5 minutes to edit a photo, I think I probably do too much. And so I would stop, press reset on Lightroom and start again. Because if it takes me longer than 2 or 3 minutes to edit an image, I'll start again, really. I like to have the image.
This photography podcast is brought to you by Frames, the upcoming printed photography magazine. Here is your today's host, W. Scott Olsen, with another fascinating conversation.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another podcast from Frames Magazine. My name is Scott Olsen, and today I have the pleasure of talking with Mark McNeill. Mark is a member of the Frames community, very well known for astro-photography, but his interests and his talents go well beyond that. He's a landscape photographer, he is a teacher, and all around, he produces the kind of work that I find personally inspiring and neat. How's that for a technical term? Mark, how are you doing today?
Yes, I'm doing good.
Surviving the lockdown over in the UK?
Yes, just about. Yes, it's where we live in Lancashire. It's not too bad, to be fair. It could be a lot worse, and I think it's a lot worse for some people. So we've got to count our blessings, really.
Absolutely. More about the virus and the implication for photographers when we get to the end. For those of you that are listening, I do want to recommend that you take a look at Mark's website. It is markmcneillphotography.com.
That's the one, yeah.
Mark, let's start at the beginning. I mean, you are now producing award-winning National Geographic level landscape images. Tell me how this all started.
Well, I think it basically started when I first started to pick the camera up was probably 10 or 15 years ago, just kind of going to the zoo and just general photography, and then as my daughter grew, I tried to document her life and we went on different little trips really. Went to the seaside, went to do seascapes, went to the Lake District, which isn't too far away from me. And when we went to the Lake District together, as she grew up, just my love for photography blossomed really, to be fair. And I think that's where it kind of started. But just from the love of capturing things that we see or trying to replicate what we see, on the back of a camera, really. That's where it kind of started, to be honest.
Do you remember your first camera? What would that have been?
My first camera, I think, was a Nikon 31,000, I think. Before that, I'm not too sure what it was before that. It might have been just a simple cybershot point and shoot. It wasn't, I think, too technical, really, just for going on holiday snaps when we went on family holidays. So it wasn't, I'll be honest, I've not done film photography, so that's something I've never done, really. I'd love to be able to try and have a go at it, but it's something that I've not jumped on at the moment. I love digital photography, really.
Tell me what appeals to you from landscape work. I mean, why not be a crime photographer or a sports photographer or something like that? What is it about landscape that appeals to you?
I think if you go to a beautiful landscape or you go to the Lake District, whether it be or somewhere in America or wherever you are, I like to go out when the weather's not the best, which at the moment most people would probably think, what's he doing that for? Or why is he going out when it's not blue skies and beautiful purple sunsets? But I like to go out when the weather is actually turning for the worst. And I think the drama in the skies and the mood and the clouds, for my photography, it make the drama and the mood and the weather and the rain and the snow or the wind or rainbows it makes for easier photography, I think. I think it's a lot easier to capture an outstanding image in really bad conditions. You might not think that, but I think if you're going to put some effort in and go and climb up a mountain, I think you're better off going when it's not glorious sunshine, but so you can capture some of that drama that we see if you didn't have a camera. So if you just had your bag and you're going for a nice walk, you see some beautiful views. If you walked in the mountains or you walked anywhere on the coast and it was blue skies and there wasn't any clouds, you wouldn't even think about getting your camera out. Whereas if you walk where there's a bit more atmosphere, a bit more mood, you can hear a rumble in the distance. I think the images come across better on social media, or when somebody looks and will say, wow, look at that. That's got the wow factor, I think. And that's what kind of draws me to going to these landscapes, really, I think.
A lot of people do think of landscapes as being very sort of static or monotone emotionally, but nothing could be farther from the truth. Landscapes are very dramatic. You have a couple pictures on your website of very large breaking waves. Tell me about one of those, or both.
The seascape images. I like the seascape because we only live, I think, about 5 or 6 miles away from the coast where I live. And at the moment, I use ND filters, and I like to try and capture the movement of the water. I don't like to do too longer exposures. So when I do photography now, it's normally anywhere between half a second and 6 seconds. I try and keep it that shorter shutter speed, just to try and keep some of that movement in the water, because most of the images you've got, I can see that the waves are rolling, and you can see, people can see that rolling. There's a trend at the moment where people put 10 stop filters on, or 16 stops, and they do 1 minute, 2 minute, and it just flattens the water. And I think they are good and they look beautiful, but I think sometimes it's nice to keep some of the nature in the image. I think keep some of that movement. And really, what I was saying about the water and the landscapes you go to, if you had just a blue skies or you had calm water, I think, these waves in the water are kind of like the moody skies, if you will. They're kind of gives the viewer what you can see in the waves. If it was just flat and very calm, I don't think they'd be very interesting photos, to be honest. I think that's what I kind of try and do. Try and keep some of that movement, some of that drama that you would see in the sky. Try and keep that in the water, so the water is telling its little story, that somebody would know automatically that water is moving about. It's quite choppy, and I hope they kind of portray that.
You're not against, however, the more serene or the more quiet image. You've got a beautiful image of a sailboat just sort of riding at anchor. I know you also did a YouTube video about taking that shot. Walk me through that shot a little bit, just from deciding you're going to take it to actually having it.
This one is a little tiny sailboat, and
yes,
there's drama above it and the clouds. And I am a photographer, I'd like to say, but I'm not. I can openly admit I'm not the best at Photoshop, or I'm not the best. I just normally edit my photos in Lightroom, and when I take an image, I like it to be a photo that I have took, not that I've spent a long time trying to process. So when I go out, I love these images that have got 2 minutes exposures and you can't see the horizon, and it looks like a very ethereal and very cloudy type of photos. Well, I went out in the rain. That shot was taken in the rain to try and do that effect, but do it actually in camera, if you will. So my thought process is I go when the low tide, so the water's really calm. And on that image as well, you can see that it's got kind of moodiness in the sky. And I just try and capture some drama in the camera rather than trying to add it too much on the post-processing side of it. So my thought process would be, that's what my thought process is. I try and, because my Photoshop skills or my blending images skills isn't as good as what it should be, and I love images that look like that, I try and do it in the back of the camera. So try and make them as real as possible, if that makes sense.
And I think you've done that successfully. There is a debate, and I don't think it'll ever be solved, about people who think any type of post-processing really ought to be suspect. And people who spend hours and hours and hours, recreating their images, we can almost stop calling that photography, call it a different kind of art. If you were better at Photoshop, would you use it more?
No, because simply because I want to be able to post a photo on a group and say, here's a photo I've taken. And it might not necessarily be the best, and it might not be the most polished image, but I can say that I've taken that image. It's not a photo, it's not an image that I've made. Most images that I take, I would say, and this is honest, if it takes me longer than 5 minutes to edit a photo, I think I probably do too much, and so I would stop, press reset on Lightroom and start again, because if it takes me longer than 2 or 3 minutes to edit an image, I'll start again, really. I like to have the image near enough right in camera, so my editing would be simply removing dust spots or removing the odd bollard or removing a twig or a branch. That would be the limit of my kind of editing skills, really, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I prefer. there's nothing wrong with digital art. There's nothing wrong with people taking 3 images or 4 images or stacking this. But just be honest. But when you post it into the group, that you actually tell people what you've done, or you've honest photography. Just make sure that you happen to mention that, if you've stuck about 6 seagulls on, or a couple of geese flying past, let the world know that let the world know that you've put them on there, or because if you're trying to sell a print and someone looks at it and thinks what an amazing shot, when someone might be purchasing that thinking this photographer's caught all this wonderful rainbows and unicorns, and the person who's buying it might not realise that it's not a real photo, or digitally enhanced. So, but that's each to their own, really, I suppose.
Your portfolio includes an awful lot of black and white and color. Do you make that choice before you shoot?
No, I don't, to be fair. I do like colour images, but I think when you go to, so if you have a storm, or you have something, or you have rough seas, I think they do look nice in black and white. But then again, it depends on some of the images where we live on the Fylde coast where we live. The water is very brown and very dirty looking, just because the sand's kicked up. So they don't look very pleasing in colour. Some do, depend on the sunlight or the time of day, but they look better in black and white. The astro-photography images that I've done in black and white, simply that I've not seen many images of the night sky in black and white, so that's why I did it. I try and be different, to be honest.
That's a wonderful opportunity, or a segue into talking about an image I really do want to know the backstory for, and that's your man standing under a tree astro-photography shot. That one got you a good bit of attention. So walk us through that one from start to finish.
So the idea with this shot was, it was at Christmas. It was really cold. It'd been snowing in 2017. There was meant to be some northern lights at this time. It was really dark, and I set the tripod up about 100 meters away from that, put it on intervalometer, and just kind of ran up to the tree. There was just me and my friend was there. It wasn't very busy, so I was lighting the tree up. I've got a colour version. I had a torch underneath me, kind of lighting the tree up. That didn't quite work, or I have a colour version that looks quite nice. And I just thought it looked different in black and white. And the editing process was in Lightroom, simply changing it over from colour to Adobe black and white, really. And I thought, wow, as soon as it made it look black and white, it looked a total different photo. And the night after I took it, I edited it, put it on Twitter, and I tagged a Professor Brian Cox, who's quite famous in England, and he retweeted it, and it just went mad after that. And then, so in the April, I entered it to the Astro-Photographer of the Year competition in People in Space. It got highly commended. So it kind of went all over the place, really. It went in all the magazines. It went in aeroplane magazines. It was on the local news. It was kind of with all the other winners as well, and all the other people who took part. And it's in a book as well. So I've got a book. It was in the Greenwich Museum, near the Royal Observatory in London. They had an exhibition there for 6 months. Then that travelled to Liverpool, and it was really nice, and it was a good thing, really. To be honest, it was a very proud moment. To be honest.
For those of you listening that don't know this image, it's sort of a bowl-shaped landscape with a single tree sitting in the bottom of the bowl, and then Mark standing underneath the tree. It is really a powerful shot.
Let me tell you where it is. So the place is called Hadrian's Wall. It's a wall in between England and Scotland, and that is an old sycamore tree. And basically, at the side of it on this picture, it's not there anymore. You can just about see to the right-hand side of me, there is like a little small sapling that they've cut down now. They want to grow a new one. But this is a tree, if anybody wants to go and Google Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves with Kevin Costner, that is a tree that's, if you look at it, that's a tree there, the sycamore. It's called the Sycamore Gap because it's in a little bit of a valley, and the gap is where the sycamore tree is. But if you go into Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, Kevin Costner was there, and that's where they used was where the scene was filmed. So it's quite a famous tree. But no, it's in a place called Northumberland in UK, a dark space, dark sky location.
Well, it is an extraordinary shot. Take me through a favorite of yours. If you had to hang one of your pictures on your wall this afternoon that's not up there now, what would it be?
I've got a picture of a stag. So it's just a simple picture of a stag, but this is, it's a place called Glencoe in Scotland near Glencoe. And I'd been out with my little girl, and she was she's about 7 at the time. So we had to go and move some furniture. So we had to drive up from England to Scotland, and we stopped overnight. We did a little camp out. We had like a mini adventure. And I said, come on, we'll go down to this loch. And this is where a James Bond film was filmed, and it was called Skyfall. And the road leads to this cottage that they've got to Skyfall. And there's a particular spot where Q and James Bond stand, and you have the Aston Martin parked up, and they both get out of the car and they look down this valley. And that's where we stood, me and my little girl, got the tripod out, took a shot, and we did a selfie where we were both looking down this beautiful country lane. There wasn't any people there whatsoever, and you don't see anybody. And after we'd done that shot, we jumped in the car and we drove down this road for about 2 miles. And just at the side of the road was this beautiful stag, and it was looking straight at us. And we parked the car up, and we just sat there for 10 minutes, and it went onto this little peak of a hill. So it kind of, it was like it was posing, basically. It kind of stood up, and it had a beautiful backdrop behind it, and it just kind of looked and stared. I think it was after food, I'm not too sure, but I just got out of the car. It didn't panic. It was probably 20 or 30 foot away, and it was stood there for, it must have been 20 minutes. It didn't run. It was only me and my little daughter. She'd never seen a stag before with his big horns, and it was just a memorable time, really. So it's the story behind the picture rather than my best picture I've took. So that was a memorable picture, really.
It's absolutely enlightening, I think, to hear the backstory of some photographs, because, as you said, sometimes the story behind it is as extraordinary as the image itself. That's a wonderful, wonderful story. And I know that spot. I've been hiking on the West Highland Way many times. And so
yeah,
I envy you the stag showing up. They haven't done that for me.
We stopped at a place called the King's House Guest House, if everybody ever goes there, and it's on the main drag, the main road, and you go over a little white bridge and you'll turn left. Then you'll go 100 metres down the road, and this is where the world famous, or the famous waterfall shot is of the Buckeye Letif Moor. That's where the waterfall shot is. That's where everybody goes there, basically, and takes this beautiful waterfall shot that leads up to this like a pointy shaped mountain. And all that road down there, it's just wonderful, really. You know, if you could ever go for a trip anywhere, that's one of the places I would advise people to go, really. It's wonderful and magical.
I agree completely. How much of your work is serendipitous, and how much of it is planned in advance? I mean, are you always ready to take a photograph?
Probably, yes. I've got twins now as well. I've got twin girls who are 4, and with the lockdown and things like that, what I've learned to do over the last 6 months while we've been on lockdown is just not plan too much, but plan a little bit more. So before I would go out in the car, say 5 or 6 years ago, I'd get in the car, drive to a location, walk around and have a full day out. Now I would probably spend a good half an hour on Google Earth looking at places and be a bit more planned about going to a certain spot and then walk around that rather than just spend the whole day. And then sometimes I go out with the camera and just go for a walk, basically. Just no tripod, just go out with the camera and just have some fun, really.
Another shot, and again, this is on the photography workshops page of your website. You do have the sycamore tree, but then you also have a seascape with it looks like an old pier of some sort way out on the horizon line.
Yes.
Tell me, I mean, that one you had to have done a little bit of work on. Tell me that story.
So this one, I'm laughing now because I did. This shot is in a place called Lytham St Anne's, and it is about 5 or 6 miles away from my house. And again, I've got this shot. I've got the old pier. This was shot with a 7200, about 70 mil, and the water, the high tide or the tide times, the tides have to be over 7 or 8 meters to go around this pier. So 9 times out of 10, so every night, most weeks. So you would say out of 6 months, twice out of 6 months, the tide would be over 6 or 7 meters to cover that up. So normally, if you look at that image, you would say that you wouldn't get any water until the top third. So you wouldn't be able to do this shot. But one day in the spring, I think it wasn't too far away, the tide said it was to be 10 meters, which is 4 meters higher than it really needed to be. But on that day, it was pouring down, absolutely hammering down. So I basically went into the garage, got a golfing umbrella, got an old fishing suit on, so waders, like an all-in-one, if you will. I'm not too sure what they're called, but like a bib and brace, if you will. So I got a jacket on, got my umbrella on, and I went out, and that was a 30-second exposure with a 0.9 ND filter. So a 6-stop filter and a 0.9 ND filter. And realistically, there was no editing on that apart from the dust spots. There's no big fancy me sitting behind a computer. That was it, really, to be fair. So the conditions made the shot. So what people would do is they could manipulate that shot to make it look like that, or you could go out in the horrible conditions and get that shot in one shot. So that's basically what it was. It was a 30 seconds exposure, f11 ISO. I think it was 64, and there's no really decent editing. I think the only thing I did on that was I actually got the white balance to be a little bit cooler. As you can see, it looks slightly blue. That's the only editing process. I could show you the raw file, to be fair. No, but I could, because that's just to show you what it was kind of like. So it's not the water is a dirty grey, you see, with the sand. So it's kind of, or a dirty brown, and the sky was a moody blue, and that's kind of I've just reduced the saturation, if anything. No editing at all in Photoshop. And this is what I'm trying to say to people, that I did a vlog not long ago, just a simple boost for people that says that in England, I'm not too sure whereabouts in the world you live, but in England where we live, so most part of the time of the year it's raining, maybe 1 or 2, 3 or 4 times a week it's clear. And if we all looked out the window every day and thought, I won't go out with a camera today because it's raining, or it's a bit wet, or it's cloudy, or it's windy, the likelihood is we would probably only go out once or twice every 2 weeks. So sometimes we just need to go out in the rain and wrap up and go out and enjoy it, really. And that's one of those shots that kind of paid off for me, being in the elements, if you will, rather than me.
I agree with you completely. And I love the phrase, the conditions make the shot. We tend to work against conditions when the weather is bad. And I like the idea of fully embracing it and saying, okay, I'm going to go take an honest photograph of these conditions. Tell me what you're working on these days. How is the virus affecting your photography? What's next for you?
Well, at the moment, I have been doing weddings, so I do the odd wedding. I do one wedding a month, or I have been doing them. Those have all been cancelled. So I've had 10 or 11 weddings cancelled till 2021-22. Some people have cancelled full stop, which means I've had to refund them all the money. So that's kind of been a nightmare. The workshops that I do, normally I would only do 1 or 2 people anyway. So I don't like doing groups of 5 or 6 people, because I feel that I'd rather go and speak to someone who wants to kind of learn 1-to-1 or 2 people with a friend. So people who actually want to listen to what you're saying. If sometimes I've been on workshops myself where people just want the location, they don't want to listen to the person talking. They simply want to be taken to a nice spot. So for the workshops, I think the restrictions have just been lifted, so I can do workshops again. And I go to teach people nothing really technical, to be fair, unless they've never used a camera before. Then yes, I'll teach them how to focus and teach them the ISO settings and f-stops. But normally I try and teach people how to see things, rather than how I learned, basically, how you teach yourself to see things and teach yourself how to put things in different spots, and how actually we can all have the best gear, we can all have the best filters, and we can all have the best equipment. But if you can't see a picture, it doesn't make any difference, really.
the composition is everything when it was finally all said and done. Can you teach an eye for composition?
I think you can give people advice, or people can watch what you would do in a certain situation. So if you go to these places that are always perfect, or you go to these places that are really flat, you've got to learn how to make the best of a bad situation, I think. And that's how you learn. I think if you go out in the sunny conditions, or you go out when the sunsets are really good all the time, I think if you went out on a bad day, you might struggle, or you might find it difficult. I think if you learn to cope with every condition, I think you'll find your photography will get better. I think it's that's what I found. Anyway, I found that if I went out when the weather was bad, the images look really moody, and you can portray that a lot easier, I think. And what we try and do is we try and go out on a normal day when it's sunny or when it's a few clouds, and we try to make those dramatic photos where you go out on a normal wet day, and that's the starter, really. It's just trying to keep your lens and the front of your lens clear, and trying to get rid of all the water, and that's the hardest part. The elements there, we just got to try and capture it.
Well, you have certainly captured it. I have become a great fan of your work. Thank you, sir. You have made my day with this podcast.
Yeah, and I think anybody who wants to progress in photography, whether you're a professional, whether you're just starting out, you've still got to have that. Got to get up and go. You can't take your foot off the gas, as you say in America. Probably, I'm not too sure if that's what it is, but you've got to keep going out. Once or twice a week, and I still enjoy it. I love going out. I went out last night. I tried to get a moonrise shot last night. It didn't happen because of all the clouds, but I was there. I can't say, you'll never get a good sunset sat in your front room, and that's one of my top tips. You'll never get an epic rainbow when you're sat in your front room or you're sat having a cup of coffee. So if the weather's not very good tonight, get the camera, get the bag loaded up, and just go out and take a shot, because you never know.
That is very wise advice.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, I can imagine you would like to hear more about what we are currently working on. Later this year, we will be launching a quarterly printed photography magazine. It will be a beautifully designed, inspiring publication. I personally truly believe that excellent photography belongs on paper, hence the idea of frames. To find out more about frames and to join more than 14,000 photography enthusiasts who enjoy our weekly newsletter, go ahead and visit frames.photography. I would love to have you in our community. Thanks so much.